live. Okay.
There we go.
My goodness.
Oh. God, Mike, you're on so often. You should just be a regular, like on our daily program.
He needs to be an ambassador at this point.
You too, Terry. I'm just gonna.
And Ms. Mann. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just have you both on all the time.
Yep.
It's the Mike and Terry show, 24/7.
Hey, wait a minute. We got to add Scott and some more people in here.
No,
I'll pop in from time to time just to kind of say hello, but make sure the show's running, that you guys are doing your job.
Oh, thank you. I like being micromanaged.
Martin Eastburn says howdy from East Texas. Billy Beckett says hello, Scott and Tyler. Don't forget Terry and Mike.
They can't see them.
You see Mike Weasner up there. He's
well, yeah, that's true.
Name is like in headlights or
sorry,
whatever.
Terry.
Cosmic rays that are flying at us. Yeah.
No, Terry, they saved the best for last. Come on now.
Oh. Thank you, Tyler.
Matthew McAlilly says, hey, y'all, from Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Yeah? We say hey, y'all here, too, in Arkansas. That's right. But we really say it in Texas. We say y'all to almost everything.
Oh, wait, we do it in West Virginia, too.
Oh, do you? How about Ohio?
Oh, yeah. Y'all come down.
No. Pekka, Stockholm, Sweden says, howdy, everyone. You don't often hear that in Sweden. But
no.
Yep. Focus on WNA from Stockholm, Sweden.
Ah.
Right. Astro for Dummies. How's everybody doing? We're all doing good. Howdy to you. And the dad frequency, yellow. Yellow. I have heard that here in Arkansas. Yellow. Yep. I've heard that in California too. Lisa Ann Fanning says, yo, from New Jersey.
About Mateo.
Yeah, my niece from New Jersey is also watching, I hope.
Did you say Lisa? Did you say Lisa?
That Lisa Ann Fanning? Is that her?
I don't know what her YouTube handle is.
It's Facebook.
Yeah. Oh, Facebook. Yeah, I don't know.
Mateo Castro says, in Argentina, we say, que Hasiaga. I probably ruined that. I'm sorry, Mateo. Martin Eastburn says, howdy, Astro, Dad, Matthew, Mateo, and Billy, and never to forget Pekka. And Harold Locke says, howdy, y'all, TGIF.
Yeah, no kidding.
All y'all, not just y'all. It's all y'all.
Yins. It's yins.
Very inclusive.
Well, my Southern Indiana accent may come across sometimes. It's Washington, not Washington.
Washington?
Washing, like you're washing your clothes.
You're washing.
It's
washing your stuff.
W-O-R. I mean, it's got to have that R in there. It's wash.
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 No one has a washing. It's washing machine.
Yep.
I'm washing my face. Yes. Well, let's see.
Yins. Yeah. Yins. Yeah. See, the dad frequency knows. Yins. Or Utes.
That's more kind of like New Jersey.
Utes? Or
yeah,
Yins?
The Utes of the world, the children, Utes.
No, Utes is a female. What farm animal is it? It's a sheep. It's a female sheep. Yuns.
Well, I don't think that's where we're going.
No.
Nope. No.
Wash and Ranch. Yep. It's going to be a fun show today. It's already fun. Starting off on the right foot.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's happy it's Friday.
It's Friday?
And it's clear out here.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
It's clear here, too.
No, it's not supposed to be tonight. And I wanted to shoot more of that comet. Dang, it.
Yeah, that was a nice shot you got. Are you going to show it today?
I'm going to stack it this weekend. I'll show it today, sure. Definitely can.
Can't wait to get this thing up in the sky.
The James Webb Space Telescope is one of the most complex and sophisticated scientific instruments ever built. A joint mission between NASA, ESA and the Canadian Space Agency, it's seen here folded and packed for launch in a clean room at Europe's spaceport in Kourou, French Guiana. Operating 1.5 million kilometers from Earth, the observatory will unfurl in space to reveal a 6.5 meter wide primary mirror made up of 18 individual hexagonal segments, a smaller secondary mirror and a giant multi-layered silver sunshield. The engineering is an impressive example of human ingenuity, but when it comes to science, Webb promises to reveal the basis of our very existence.
The origin of Webb is the search for our origins. We want to find out where the first galaxies formed, how they formed when they started making their stars in the very early universe not long after the Big Bang. And to do this, Webb uses its big mirror and its infrared vision to look into these really early days, observe the light from these galaxies that's been traveling to us for billions of years, and it shows us these galaxies, how they were billions of years ago.
In orbit now for more than 31 years, the Hubble Space Telescope has already transformed our view of the cosmos. It's revealed the accelerating expansion of the universe, the birth and death of stars, the evolution of galaxies, and storms on Saturn and Jupiter. But Hubble primarily detects visible light, the wavelengths we see with our own eyes. By viewing in the infrared, Webb will be able to give us a new perspective on the universe. To capture photons of light that have travelled across space for billions of years, the new telescope is loaded with innovative detector, optical and cooling technologies.
The telescope itself has to operate at a temperature of minus 233 degrees Celsius. And that means that all of the systems on board have to be able to cool into space behind the giant sunshield. And getting that sunshield, the size of a tennis court, to unfold into space and shield the telescope has been one of the biggest engineering challenges solved along the way.
Webb's 4 scientific instruments include MIRI, a mid-infrared camera and spectrograph. This involves a consortium of European institutions led from Scotland. And NearSpec, a near-infrared spectrograph, which is led by ESA.
It's very important because it will allow us to analyze the light of the astronomical objects we will observe. This instrument will split the near-infrared lights from the astronomical object into its components. And this is very useful to scientists because from that they can understand the physics of the objects they are observing, what are the temperature, the elements, the physical condition, and therefore we can understand what's going on the objects we observe.
So the James Webb Space Telescope will not only be able to view newly formed galaxies and stars, but determine what they're made of, and in the case of planets, even whether they have atmospheres capable of supporting life. It's taken more than 30 years of planning, designing and construction to get to this point, but it's going to be worth the effort. Like Hubble before it, Webb has the potential to transform our view and understanding of the universe.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Scott Roberts with Explore Scientific and the Explore Alliance. Our special guest today is Mike Simmons, who's become quite famous for his smartphone astrophotography, but he's an author, of course, an astronomer for a long time, jet plane fighter pilot, and I don't know if he was a fighter pilot, but certainly a jet plane pilot, okay, flying some high-performance jet planes. And he is a champion of dark skies. Also joining us for a few minutes here is the secretary of the Astronomical League, Terry Mann. Terry, I'm going to turn it over to you for a minute.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Scott. I just wanted to let everybody know about our Astronomical League Live tonight. It will start at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Matt Penn will be our keynote speaker. Matt will be speaking to you about a project that it sounds like other people can be involved in. And as soon as I find the title, I'll tell you, but it will be a very interesting talk. And would you believe I didn't put it on here? I believe it's the Dynamic Eclipse Broadcast Initiative.
Yes.
And it will be
Good
an
memory,
exciting
Terry.
project. Do
Good
what?
memory.
Yeah, no, I just found it, but don't tell
Now,
anybody.
that's the same guy. I think that's the same guy that did Citizen Kate for the
Yes.
2017.
Yes, it is. And he will be taking, I believe, some of the results from that project, and they'll be looking at it for upcoming solar eclipses, I believe. I've seen some of the pictures a little bit, going over what he is going to talk about tonight, and I think it's going to be amazing. And so along with him, we're going to have Chuck Allen, who is the vice president of the league, and he will be speaking about stars and the sizes and colors. And we're also going to have Don Knabb. He is one of the regional chairs for the Mid-East region of the Astronomical League. And he is going to be talking about one of the observing club programs. So we have quite a list on here for tonight. We will start, like I said, at 7 p.m. EST, and we'd love to see y'all there.
I'll be there. For
I
sure.
know, I'm counting on you, Scott. The other two, Tyler and Mike, we can have you there too. You're invited.
Yeah, just stay on.
Yeah, just stay with it, you know. Yeah, it'll be a long night. But
I'll give you a plug. I presume you're doing drawings for gift certificates or something?
We're doing drawings. Tonight will be for the Astronomical League calendar for 2022.
Okay. Well, I encourage everybody to attend the events that Scott does, the Global Star Parties and the Astronomical League events, because you can actually win something. I used an Astronomical League gift certificate this morning with Kent Martz at Explore Scientific. So thank you.
Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. At virtual, Alcon Virtual, you were a winner this year. I remember.
Yep, big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You are welcome. And thank you, Explore Scientific.
Chris Larson says, I have no idea what stars are, but here, have some.
Hey, in Ohio,
Chris, you don't have to analyze it so much because you are made of star stuff. Okay, so whatever you do, you know, you're always right. So there you go. Terry, thank you so much. Thank you. And we look forward to it tonight. It's going to be fun. Yep,
I will talk to you all later.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, let's bring on Tyler Bowman. Tyler is the host. He's saying no. He is actually the host of Focus on Astrophotography, and he has, and he actually does astrophotography.
I know, I got proof this time. By golly, I got proof.
Gee whiz, that's right.
By golly, gee whiz.
That's right. So why don't you introduce our guest more properly? And here's Mike and Tyler right now.
So if anybody doesn't know who this wonderful gentleman is, he's been in the Air Force longer than I've been alive. I think he's still in there. I don't know. I think he's secretly doing things. But this is a wonderful Mike Weasner. Everybody, well, that I see on YouTube may know Mike Weasner, but the people that don't know Mike Weasner is in my opinion, a dedicated astronomer. He helps push Deep Sky, or IDAS. I believe that's right, Mike. I could be wrong. IDA, which is the International Dark Sky Association in Tucson.
Yes.
Okay. He has his own observatory, which is obviously behind him. And Mr. Mike has a 12-inch Meade.
Yes.
And he does smartphone astrophotography. And when I say that this guy can produce amazing shots on an iPhone, it's pretty incredible from what he can do. Granted, he's using 12 inches of aperture, but what the man can produce is amazing. So I'm going to show my picture, and then I'm going to leave it to Mike, because everybody seems to think that I don't do astrophotography. But I've been doing the comet that's been around That's Comet Leonard? Yes, it's Comet Leonard. And I actually have a shot of Comet Leonard. And I got to, where's it at? Where's that? And, oh, come on, screen. You're killing me. You're killing me, screen. It's not going to let me. There it goes. Throw it over here. Bam.
Hey,
Cool.
nice.
That is
That,
100.
that tail goes, it looks like it goes out of the frame.
It started when I started the imaging down here in this quadrant. And by the time I was done, it was all the way up at the top.
Wow.
That sucker's moving. I think if I was
It-
correct.
right next to the comet, like in line with the tail, right behind the head, it looks like that's either a background star or like a broken piece of the comet.
Yeah,
No?
it could be. There's a little frag right here. It looks like people are saying it's kind of separating a little bit. But I shot this the night. This was the other night, and that was 122nd exposure with the Explore Scientific FPL 53140. And it was a good. It was a good framing. I was using the ZWO 294 one-shot color, and I'll be interested to see what it's going to look like stacked and processed. So this is just raw image straight out of Sequence Generator Pro. So everybody that thinks that I don't image, there's proof. There's the proof. Proof's in the pudding, as I've always been told. But other than that, folks, Mike Weasner is going to talk about a little bit what he does, who he is, and some smartphone astrophotography. So Mike, it's all you, buddy.
No, thank you. Just to follow up on Comet Leonard, as you said, it's in the morning sky right now, but I think it's the 14th of this month. It's going to start showing up in the evening sky.
Oh, thank the Lord.
Man, it's eventually going to get down near Venus. So
3 in the morning is rough.
Yeah. So thank you, Scott. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate the introduction there. Yeah, former fighter pilot, former manager on the space shuttle program, amateur astronomer since I was 6 years old. You'll see a little bit of a telescope that I used when I was a teenager that I still have. And, dark sky champion. So doing lots of stuff. Retired for now for a number of years, but that doesn't mean I'm not doing anything. And yes, I do like doing iPhone astrophotography. I'll be out doing some tonight since it looks like it's going to be clear again. So that's going to be good. Anyway, let me try to share my screen. What I'm going to do is show you a whole slew of pictures. We're going to go through them really quickly because otherwise I could spend hours and hours and hours doing all that. And then we'll talk about some tips near the end of that. So let me hopefully share my screen and hopefully it'll work better than it did the other night. I think maybe if I do this one. So do you have?
I see it.
All righty. Well, hopefully it'll change
It worked.
slide for me this time.
There you go.
Okay, so there's my contact information. Go to Weasner.com and you can just click there and go to my observatory website, a whole bunch of other stuff. And you can see that old telescope from 1961 there and just a few images. And we'll talk some more about these images. First of all, a disclaimer. I say that I just play at astrophotography. I don't spend hours and hours capturing photons. I don't spend hours and hours in post-processing individual images. And I generally don't stack individual images.
Come on, Mike.
Which is
It's
exactly
fun.
why smartphone astrophotography is so wonderful. It's simple. The phones are powerful enough now that you can just do an incredible job. But I also use a digital SLR camera for a lot of my imaging. But I like simple, I like easy, I'm lazy. So this works out really well. Let's talk about the types of astrophotography because some apply to smartphones, some do not. You can do obviously simple night sky photography where you just take your phone and you point it up towards the sky and you can hand hold it. You can put it on a tripod and you can take some really cool pictures. You can also mount your phone on a tracking mount, or piggyback on a telescope that's tracking. Prime focus astrophotography, where you've mounted the camera directly to the optics of the telescope, don't apply to smartphone astrophotography because you can't remove the lens unless you want to do some major surgery on your very expensive iPhone, which I do not recommend. Afocal astrophotography, however, does apply, where you're shooting what you would see with your eye in the eyepiece of the telescope. Definitely applies to that. Eyepiece projection astrophotography, the last type, again, does not apply because you cannot remove the camera lens. So I don't claim that I was the first person to do phone camera astrophotography. My ETX site that I started in 1996 had lots of submissions of moon images that people took with their very small, very non-internet-ish, non-music players, all that kind of good stuff, very small camera. They would send me moon images back in 2004 and 2006. So I don't claim to be the first person to do this. For Steve Jobs, who was Apple CEO at the time, unveiled the original iPhone in January 2007. And on Christmas Eve of 2007, I think I took the very first iPhone astrophotograph, which was of the moon you see there on the right, using a 70 millimeter refractor at 39 power. So that I think I can claim. Over the years, I've continued to do iPhone astrophotography with a whole bunch of different telescopes and binoculars and clip-on telephoto lenses. And of course, by upgrading my phone every couple of years, getting ever-improving images with the ever-improving cameras and the ever-improving sensors. Of course, you can do terrestrial photography through your telescopes or spotting scopes, binoculars, night scope, or just using clip-on lenses if you want. We'll talk a little bit about that later. So the easiest way to get started with smartphone astrophotography is just hand-hold the phone's camera over an eyepiece. And again, you're doing afocal imaging. And you can see that there on the right, holding the camera lens just right over the eyepiece. You're going to be limited to brighter objects like the moon or the planets because you have to keep the shutter speed fast. Keeping the camera lens properly aligned over the eyepiece is a challenge because otherwise your hands are moving around and can be difficult to keep what the camera is seeing centered over the eyepiece. And it's difficult to avoid blurring due to the camera movement, especially if you're trying to use the longer shutter speeds on faint objects. But it can be done. It's certainly a great way to get started. Basic technique will be to focus the object in the eyepiece to your eye, and then just hold the camera lens over the eyepiece. Let auto exposure do its thing, adjust that if necessary, and if it's possible with the app that you're using, and then just take the photograph. And now you have, an instantaneous photograph. You don't have to do anything fancy with the computers or anything. You have the image. So here's what you can do handheld. Some very nice crescent moons. You get craters on the moons. That crescent moon, the very, very thin one, is obviously just a few hours old after new moon. So that was kind of a neat capture to get. And getting a capture like that where time is critical because the moon is getting lower in the sky, getting down into the trees perhaps. You can't be fiddling around and say, oh, I want to take this photograph, mount your camera to the telescope, and by the time you get all ready to go, it's gone. So just grab your iPhone, your Android phone, hold the camera lens over the eyepiece, take the picture, and you captured it. You can do phases of Venus. And of course, right now, Venus is getting into a nice crescent phase. The crescent phase is reducing, so the planet's going to be getting bigger and brighter, and really becomes a very nice photographic object for an iPhone or an Android phone. So there you can see just a nice crescent Venus. You can do the Galilean moons, again, just by hand holding the iPhone over your telescope eyepiece.
Venus kind of looks like that right now.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting to that.
Yeah, it was nice.
So these were pictures during the Great American Total Solar Eclipse in 2017. And what I used was a clip-on 8-power telephoto lens that actually had a solar filter attached. So you get the partial phase there on the left, remove the filter, and you get the corona there on the right in the wide field view. But the best way to do smartphone astrophotography is to physically mount the smartphone onto the eyepiece. There's lots of adapters available. Explore Scientific sells some. A lot of other companies sell them. And they typically run at the lower end from $20 to $100. Most are universal and support a wide range of phone sizes and camera location. But there are some that are specific to certain smartphone models or sizes or the camera location. So if you keep upgrading your phone every year or two, sometimes with those very specific ones, you have to get a new adapter for your phone. And some will work very nicely with spotting scopes and binoculars. You'll see some examples of that shortly. And as with hand holding the camera lens over the eyepiece, with those universal adapters, aligning the camera lens right over the center of the eyepiece can still be a challenge because they are universal. The adapter that I use most of the time is from a company called Leeuwenhoek. It's a $30 adapter. You can see it there on the right. It's very solid plastic, so it's very lightweight. Clamps onto the eyepiece here. It supports small eyepieces, the old 0.965 inch size, 1¼ inch, and 2 inches, up to a 2.5 inch tube diameter. You can put it on spotting scopes and binoculars as well. It also has a tripod mounting hole, so you can mount it on a tripod. And because it's universal, most of the smartphone models are supported. So here towards the middle of the picture, in the middle of the screen, you can see it's mounted up directly onto an eyepiece of a telescope. Lower left-hand corner, it's mounted on a pair of binoculars, mounted directly to a tripod next to that. And then it's mounted to a handheld 8-power monocular. And this is looking out towards Kitt Peak. You can see my little observatory, and then way off in the distance, 65 miles away, is Kitt Peak National Observatory. And here is what, through the 8-power monocular, the phone saw. So you can see the flat portion of the mountain right here at the right end. You might see something, depending on how big your screen is, you might see something sort of sticking up. That's the Mayall 4-meter dome observatory. So doing something like this will let you really get some nice long distance photographs. There's another adapter from a company called PhoneScope that's about $100, so it's not cheap. So they have adapters for 1¼ inch eyepieces as well as 2-inch eyepieces. And what it is this ring. They have a separate little ring adapter that clamps down onto the eyepiece. And there's adapters for binoculars and spotting scopes and rifle scopes. They have an optional tripod mounting adapter as well, but you do need a specific case that fits onto your specific model, like a specific model Android or iPhone. So again, as you upgrade, you have to replace this case. And I just got a new case from them for my new iPhone 13 Pro Max, which actually has a newer design than what's shown here, which is really slick. And I'll be posting a review of that on my website when I'm done. But the neat thing about this guy is it totally eliminates that optical alignment challenge that you see when you're doing handheld or with the universal adapters, because this adapter ring totally clamps down right around the eyepiece. And the case is designed so that the center of the eyepiece is right over the center of your camera lens. So you do not have that optical alignment challenge. It's really nice. And again, you can mount it on binoculars. Like you see, this is actually, binoculars are mounted to a tracking mount. So you could, do pictures of the moon or something like that, or night sky, Ryan Nebula. You can put it on a telescope, obviously. This particular picture of mounted on this pair of binoculars, those are 12 by 50 binoculars. Picacho Peak that I arrowed over there is 31 miles away. And this is what the camera lens saw. A little bit cropped, but you can see that's a very detailed picture of this really neat mountain over 31 miles away from me. So that's kind of what you can do. For those of you who watch Kent Mart's birding shows on Thursday, think about what you could do for birding with your iPhone or smartphone mounted on a pair of binoculars. We'd really get some neat, cool pictures that way. So let's just show you real quickly a bunch of pictures taken with the camera mounted on an eyepiece. You can obviously do lunar mountains with their neat shadows. I love looking and photographing the lunar shadows. Obviously craters like Copernicus there that you see. This recent eclipse in November was totally done. This sequence was totally done on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. This eclipse was actually the first one that I did a whole complete sequence totally on the iPhone. Normally I might do 1 or 2 pictures, but for this eclipse, I decided to just do it totally on my new iPhone and see how well it worked out. And pretty pleasing results there. You can really see the sequence of the Earth's shadow progressing towards the moon, and then of course the near total eclipse there in the middle, and then the shadow moving off.
Mike,
Totally
There is one question. Pekka's wanting to know how much eyepiece pressure can you put on, like when you're using your phone holder on an eyepiece, how much pressure do you put on there when you're using an adapter?
I assume he's meaning the clamping down.
Yeah, I think it's the clamping mechanism.
Certainly you want to do a lot. I mean, the eyepieces aren't going to bend and collapse because the adapters aren't going to let you do that much pressure. So it's not like a vice clamp or something. But you do want to have sufficient pressure to do two things. One, so that the phone doesn't fall off of the eyepiece, especially as you're slewing the telescope around and the orientation is changing. In fact, maybe even upside down in some with an equatorial mount or a gem. So you do want to clamp it down where it's not going to slip off. The other thing that you want to worry about, you want it sufficiently tight so that the camera stays, the phone stays perpendicular to the eyepiece. Because if it tilts off to the side, then the camera lens isn't looking straight into the eyepiece, it's looking towards the edge of the eyepiece. So you do need to make it tight enough to do that. And I'll kind of touch on that a little bit later. You can do sunspots, obviously with a proper solar filter. You can do the brighter asteroids. So this was series there on the right with an old iPhone several years ago. So you can do take pictures of your favorite asteroids. Mars during the opposition last October. Just a single iPhone photograph. It's not stacked or anything like that. So you can see the South Polar Cap down there. You can see Sirius Major up there. Pretty cool. And of course, Saturn, the ring, Cassini division, just again, a single photograph, not stacked. This was the Chinese space station several years ago. The first one that they launched transcending the sun. So taken with a solar filter. So again, just kind of examples of what you can do. Picture there on the left of the double cluster. I just took that a few nights ago using my new iPhone 13 Pro Max. Love the colors that came out here, the red stars that are between the two clusters. I was totally blown away by getting that color. Alberio here on the right, showing the blue and the goldish yellow colors of those the two stars. I was really pleased with that photograph as well. Globular clusters are very easy to do with a smartphone, so definitely an excellent target. M13 there on the left and M22 on the right. What about Nebula? Blue Snowball. If you've ever looked at the blue Snowball or taken images with a DSLR or a high-end imager, you can get some pretty neat structure. Well, this was obviously with an iPhone, a magnified view of what's there in the center. You can see the structure of the nebula. And again, that just totally blows my mind that with a smartphone, you can still do those kinds of things. Again, not a, really a manipulated image being multiple stacks of stuff that I took individual pictures of. It's just a single image done with an app that I'll talk a little bit about later. Dumbbell Nebula worked out pretty nice. Swan Nebula there on the left. Triangular Galaxy on the right. You can see the spiral structure. Just, like, wow, good heavens. Eskimo Nebula. Not quite as detailed. This is with an older iPhone. I'll be doing that again with my new iPhone here as Gemini gets higher in the sky. Picture on the right just really amazed me when I got it. The M46 open cluster, all those stars, and the NGC 2438 planetary nebula. I was really pleased that I got such nice detail with the planetary nebula there that's behind the open cluster. M51 Purple Galaxy. You can see the two components and kind of a hint of the spiral structure. This was with an older iPhone. Looking forward to re-imaging it with my new iPhone. Picture on the right of M87 Galaxy. I don't know how well it's going to show up through Zoom and then on your screens, but the black hole jet is sticking up right there.
Oh yeah, you can see it.
Okay, good. With a smartphone, you get that.
Incredible.
Totally incredible. Totally incredible.
Right.
You can do comets, and as Tyler mentioned earlier, Comet Leonard is doing well right now. So get up early in the morning if you want, and go out and photograph it with an iPhone or with an Android phone. This was Comet Lovejoy many, many years ago. Leo Triplet of Galaxies. Wide field view with a low power eyepiece. We got M65, M66, and NGC 3628 Ceres Galaxy, all within the same field of view. Sombrero Galaxy, we got the dust lane going across there. And now my favorites. M81 Bode's Galaxy down at the bottom. M82 Cigar Galaxy, nice wide field view to get both of them. And then adding more magnification, higher power eyepiece, getting just M82. Notice the structure there. You've got the colors, you've got the dust lane going through there in the center. Just an incredible picture that I was able to get there. Again, just with an iPhone. What can you say? Everybody's favorite, of course.
Everybody's got an astro camera in their pocket almost, huh?
Yeah, just about, absolutely. Of course, everybody's favorite, Great Nebula and Orion. You can get a lot of nice color, lots of nice details, lots of stars. Pretty impressive nebula with an iPhone. So all of those previous examples were done with an 8-inch or 12-inch telescope, but you can use any telescope. So keep that in mind. You can use any telescope for this. A tracking mount helps, but it's not necessary for the bright objects. And you'll see some examples of that. So I mentioned that 1961 Edmund Scientific 3-inch Newtonian reflector. And this was an old, I think it was an iPhone 4 many years ago during this particular lunar eclipse. So, you can do things like that with just an old kind of, not quite Altaz, but with a fake equatorial mount on an old wobbly wood tripod. You could do those kinds of things.
What is a fake equatorial mount?
Well, it's fixed. It was fixed for 40 degrees latitude.
Okay, all right.
Which I'm at 32.
You're at 40, you're perfect.
Yeah, so it's actually surprisingly it works pretty well for stuff. So, but yeah, it's you can't adjust it other than doing something with the tripod legs. Right. So here's a 70 millimeter refractor with the iPhone mounted on it. Here's the dumbbell nebula, low power, right there in the middle. Whoops, not on it. And you can even do with that low power wide angle, you can do stuff like the Andromeda Galaxy, and you can see a hint of the structure going all the way across here.
Yeah.
A 90 millimeter Maxitoff Cassegrain, M42, 127 millimeter Maxitoff Cassegrain, Jupiter, its Great Red Spot, Saturn, Cassini Division, Hercules Globular Cluster, a 102 Altaz mounted refractor, M82, so there's no tracking, just a single exposure M82, M42 Orion Nebula. The moon always looks great through these things, getting Earth shine on the crescent phases. Just really incredible what you can do. So let's talk about other types of photography. So all these smartphone adapters that have a 1 1/4 inch tripod mounting hole can be used on a camera tripod, piggyback adapters, or a tracking mount. So there on the right-hand side, you can see the iPhone mounted on one of these sky tracker types of thing. Down in the lower right-hand corner, you can see it's piggybacked on the telescope. And the picture in the middle shows that 8-power clip-on lens with a solar filter on it, just sitting on one of these little flexible Gorilla Pods. So you can put the phone anywhere and take pictures.
True.
And the types of pictures that you can do when you're doing that are star trails with lots of airplanes crossing here, captured a meteor over on the left-hand side. This was a couple-hour exposure. Or you can get the space station. You can see the space station rising over the dome of my observatory there. With the telephoto, clip-on telephoto lenses, or as the telephoto lenses get more magnification, like the iPhone 13 Pros have a 3-power telephoto lens. But if you clip on one of these bigger ones, you can get more magnification. So this was the Pleiades on the left on a tracking mount, and the Beehive open cluster on there on the right. Piggybacking, doing Orion, there in the middle with a wide angle clip-on lens, or a lot of the phones now have their built-in wide angle lenses. You can get the zodiacal light, and off to the left-hand side, you can see setting Orion constellation. So, but again, you can do something like the zodiacal light. Looking forward to getting zodiacal light again in the January, February timeframe with the new phone. Picture on the right, picture on the right Stop that. Keep switching on me. Picture on the right shows Andromeda, and zooming in, cropping down, you can see that there's M31 galaxy, Andromeda galaxy. So other piggyback, just mounting on a small telescope with a tracking mount, and again, that 8-power telephoto clip-on lens, things like the Orion Nebula, you can see the sword, you see 2 stars of the belt there, and there's me sitting at the telescope. Talk about video recording very briefly. When you're imaging planets, it can really be a big help to do a video recording, because you can take hundreds to thousands of video frames in a short period of time using either the 24 frames per second all the way up to 240 frames per second the iPhones support. So in 10 seconds, you can get over 2,000 video frames. You can then stack all of those or the best frames using the stacking software on your computer. So here on the right, you see Venus, 1,700 frames were stacked. A very nice thin crescent picture.
Yeah.
Mars during the opposition last year, 2,500 frames. Got the North Polar hood, the Southern Polar cap, and some details there on the surface. Jupiter on the right, 2,000 frames. Got the Great Red Spot, Saturn, 2,500 frames, Cassini division, and the cloud bands. So let's talk about apps just real quickly. Because every smartphone has its own camera app, but those are going to be limited in functionality. There's typically no intervalometer mode. There's no special modes for long exposures or star trails or doing satellite imaging. And there are these more capable apps for both Android and Apple smartphones. Android apps that I'm aware of our Deep Sky camera and AstroCam. They do give you full control over the exposure, and they will do image stacking on the device. But since they're Android, I haven't used those apps. I can't really talk about them. On the iPhone, the app that is actually the most capable for doing iPhone astrophotography is an app called Nightcap Camera. Totally recommend this guy. It's $3. It's definitely worth it. Gives you full exposure control. It does image stacking on the phone. It's got a ton of exposure modes. And full disclosure, I've been a beta tester for this developer for many, many years. So some of the things that you see it doing, you can blame me for or thank me for, as the case may be. There's 2 other apps that I want to mention. I found out about these last year called Spyro Cam and Milky Cam. And these are free. They're very complex. They're hard to use, but boy, are they pretty amazing. They not only do the image stacking, but they'll do dark frames and a whole bunch more capabilities. But the neatest thing that these apps will do is star registration on a non-tracking as mount. So as the stars drift across the field of view, it keeps the stars registered for the image that it's building up. It's doing its stacking. When the image gets off to the edge of the field of view, the object that you want to photograph, you pause the image capture, recenter or move the object off to the other side of the eyepiece, resume the exposure. And again, as it drifts across, it keeps those stars registered. It's a pretty slick capability. Let's talk about Nightcap Camera some more. So here's the basic interface of Nightcap Camera. And like I said, it gives you full control over the ISO, the shutter speed, white balance, focus, what camera lens you're going to use. You can use digital zoom if you want, and you can lock all these settings. So really gives you full control over what you're doing with your camera. Got an ISO range on the latest model iPhones. It goes up to 32,000. I was blown away when I saw that with my new iPhone 13 Pro Max. The older phones do like 12,000 or 8,000. But very little noise, surprisingly, at those very high ISO settings. Shutter speed goes from 1 second on current model iPhones down to over 100,000th of a second. So for really bright objects, the older phones only go from 1/3 of a second to 1/2 second as the slowest shutter speed. Full white balance range, full focus range, and mostly for daytime photography, you can use artificial intelligence to give you the best image. You typically won't use that for your nighttime stuff. There's a whole bunch of other enhancements you can make. I'm not going to go about those because you'll find out as you use the app when to use those kind of things. But the special modes, long exposure, doing stars, doing this space station, doing light trails, star trails. Like the star trails and the space station captures, it actually takes multiple exposures. And as you watch on the screen, it stacks all those, builds them up. So you see the star trails over time just building up. You see the track of a space station rising, or any satellite that's bright enough, you'll see that, right? You'll see that trail being built up. And that's how that one space station trail over the dome of my observatory was done. Really neat capabilities. There's a whole slew of other settings. I won't talk about those, but the does have an intervalometer that lets you do a whole slew of, set it up to do a whole bunch of photos in advance. You can set the exposure time. You can set how often you want those pictures taken. And it does support remote shutter capability, and I'll touch on those in a bit. The app stacks the images on the device. So it takes a whole series of 1 second exposure. If you're doing a 1 minute exposure, it stacks up 60 of those 1 second exposure. If you're doing a 5 minute exposure, it stacks up 360 of those images. I typically found that the 1 minute exposure is kind of the sweet spot. Going longer than that, you really don't gain that much. But you'll use that long exposure when you have a tracking mount. No, there's no star registration, so you need fairly accurate guiding. Does require a fairly recent iOS. We're up to iOS 15 now. So it works with iOS 11 or later. And if you have a watch, Apple Watch, it does support capabilities from the watch with Watch 3.0 or later, Watch OS 3.0. It's compatible with the iPhones, the iPads, and the iPod Touches. And I'm hoping in conversations with the developer that he's going to include a lot of new improvements for the latest iPhone models and the next release, whenever that happens. But I will see them early because I'm a beta tester. Beginning with iOS 13, the camera app from Apple has this thing called night mode. And it worked with the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max, and of course the 12 series and now the 13 series. It does amazing stuff to enhance the look of low illumination photographs. It's automatically turned on, but you can turn it off if you don't want. It's got an exposure length of 3 to 30 seconds on older phones. On the newer phones, it's more like 3 to 10 seconds. You can do night sky photography, and of course, as you see there, it does work great on the Orion Nebula. I've been using it to do handheld pictures of satellites or constellations, just handheld. Last night, I got a picture, I think it was of 5 Starlink satellites all crossing through the constellation of Perseus. I could not believe it. I take a picture, and then a couple minutes later, there goes another one on the same trajectory. And then 2 minutes later, another one on the same trajectory. So it's neat to just do that handful instantaneous capture of something like that. Definitely worthwhile. Some bunch of tips I'm going to give you now. So to prevent vibrations from touching the screen, use the camera app self-timer, use a hat trick method that you can see. Boy, come on. Use the hat trick method that you see there on the right, to just blocking the aperture of the telescope while the shutter on the camera is open. With an iPhone, you can use these earbuds as a remote control shutter release. That may work with some Android phones, or you can use the Apple Watch to start and stop the exposures. And you can see there on the right a screenshot of the iPhone screen, and that's the Swan Nebula live there in the middle of the screen. You just tap the shutter button, it starts exposure over on the night camera on your phone. You can also use a Bluetooth connected device for doing the shutter tripping. Works great. As I mentioned, getting the camera lens aligned over the eyepiece can be a challenge. So use a bright object like the moon or open star clusters. Point a flashlight into the telescope to illuminate the eyepiece field of view, or remove the eyepiece with the camera attached and pointed at some bright light. And that's what you see there on the right. I pointed it down at a red light in the observatory. Helps you get the camera lens properly centered over the eyepiece. For bright objects, Moon, Venus, Jupiter might overexpose with some of the camera apps, especially the basic ones that are included. So you can use a moon filter or a polarizing filter to reduce that brightness. If your camera app allows, lock the focus, because the camera is going to try to be smarter than you are and change the focus on those very dim objects. And again, if your camera app allows, manually adjust exposure. Take lots of different exposures until you get used to what works for different objects. Place the camera lens at the same distance as the eyepiece eye relief. So if you have an eyepiece with a very long eyepiece eye relief, the camera lens needs to be basically that same distance. That'll maximize the field of view as seen by the camera. Use low magnification to enhance the faint object brightness for galaxies and nebulae. You can use a higher magnification on star clusters, globular clusters, and bright planetary nebula. Keeping the eyepiece eye cup attached keeps any stray light from hitting the camera lens, but sometimes you have to remove it with some adapters. Using the digital zoom or telephoto lens on your phone may or may not improve the image. So try it out, see how it works for you. You may or may not like the results. Use a clean eyepiece to avoid dust donuts. So this image you see there on the right, come on, stop doing that. Why are you doing this, PowerPoint? Is actually of a crescent Mercury. That's that small little crescent there in the middle with a lot of dust on the eyepiece. And so use an eyepiece cleaner to clean your eyepieces before you do afocal imaging. And as we talked about earlier, ensure that adapter is tight on the eyepiece and that the phone is secure on the adapter, or ensure your phone against falling off the telescope off the ground. You don't want to have that happen. And do lots of experimentation, and don't get frustrated with your initial attempts. An issue that I just discovered when I got my iPhone 13 Pro Max, beginning with the iPhone 12 Pro models and continuing with the 13 Pro models, Apple added this LiDAR sensor, light detection and ranging. And what it does is it sends out a little pulse of light that bounces off an object to do two things. One, low light focusing, as well as it's used for the augmented reality capabilities that the iPhones now have. But that light obviously adds something that you don't want to have. It bounces off the front piece of the glass of the eyepiece right back into your camera lens. So this was, an image of the Eagle Nebula that I was taking, and I said, where the heck did all this light come from? I turned all the lights off in the observatory. I wanted to be certain nothing was hitting the camera lens, and did some more research and come to find out, yep, it's the LiDAR lights. And you cannot turn that off. Unfortunately, Apple doesn't give us a way to do that yet. Now that they know about the issue, because I've raised it and developers have raised it, so we'll see what happens. But you cannot turn it off. So the only thing you can do is block it. And this is the camera lenses for the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And that little LiDAR port there is that black dot. And just right below the wide angle lens. So I came up with this little prototype cover. It's just a piece of cardboard with 3 cutouts for the 3 lenses. And I'm holding it on with the old clips from the clip-on lenses because I had them available. And that's very effective because it's blocking the LiDAR from hitting the eyepiece. Just briefly touch on, you're going to want to do some sort of imaging editing with any of your photo editing apps. You're going to want to stretch the image so you can improve the exposure, improve the contrast. You're probably going to want to sharpen the image a little bit. You can do noise reduction, color adjustments. And of course, if you do take multiple images of an object, you can stack those in your stacking software as well. So if you've got a smartphone, start doing smartphone astrophotography.
That's right.
Excellent. Good presentation, Mike.
I like the way you ended that, Mike.
That's funny. So apparently Josh Kovich sent an album to the Explore Alliance at Explore Scientific, Scott. So we'll have to check that out and maybe do it on the show, on a future show. Maybe.
Good. Great.
That's great, Mike. Again, I appreciate you.
And we should mention, Scott will probably remember the guy's name. There's a guy down in South America and Chile who
Yeah. Maxi Falaris.
Yeah.
Maxi.
And he pulls the lens off and,
Yeah, he rips an old smartphone apart and it's just imaging directly to the sensor, right?
Yes,
And so,
yes. And he has done some amazing things with that because it's like the old days when you took a webcam and you pulled, the lens off and you mounted that directly to your telescope. Same kind of thing there. So you're just doing kind of that raw imaging right to the sensor. And definitely
And a lot of us have an old smartphone just in a drawer somewhere, so.
Yeah,
No?
true statement.
So you have at it, if you're not going to, gift your children a smartphone or something, then, gift yourself a new dedicated astro camera.
And as these phone cameras keep improving, as the software keeps improving, it's really been amazing. Like I said, I've been doing this since 2007 with the original iPhone, and each iteration, I only upgrade every 2 years, so that's I get every other phone model. So right now I've got the new 13 Pro Max, which is,
I didn't even know they were that high yet. Jeez. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm behind the times already.
Yep.
But you can still do this even with the older phones.
That's true. That's true. And actually, I've been surprised at what my smartphone can already do. I mean, I haven't gone as far as you have, Mike, but definitely have done like some star fields and stuff like that. And it is very impressive. And you're using an Apple phone. I am too, but there's lots of other good phones out there. I think I've heard that the Google Pixel is excellent for night sky photography. Some of them have kind of optimized.
Pixel
light
does an amazing job on the Milky Way. I've been somewhat disappointed that the iPhones haven't done as nicely on the Milky Way. It does other stuff very nicely, but Milky Way, not so good.
Not so good, huh? Well, it's, the dynamic range, the sensitivity, all that other stuff. Of course, the cameras are made mostly for daytime photography, but lots of things to look at night, including the stars. So,
And I should do one little plug.
Okay.
Next, David H. Levy, Arizona's Dark Sky Star Party is going to be at Oracle State Park, which is 4 miles east of where I'm sitting right now.
Woo.
And an expanded version of this talk will be given, assuming Scott doesn't kick me off the.
Oh no, I would be disappointed if you didn't. So that's cool. Very cool. So that's awesome. So yeah, if you go to the star party, you gotta bring your smartphone for sure. No excuses for not bringing your smartphone. And Mike will guide you through the process. The last Dark Sky Star Party we had, you also did some imaging, and you showed me some of the new apps, and I was able to make some star field type shots, and it was impressive. It was fun. It was just fun, So that's right.
You get those instantaneous gratification things,
right? Yeah, and it's already on your smartphone. You don't have to transfer it to your smartphone because now it's ready to go to your friends in email, social media, whatever,
Yep.
That's right. That's so cool. Well, Tyler's dancing back there.
Is he about to get like work or what?
You got some fat beats going on back there?
Just listen to you guys just talking about iPhones. I did want to mention next week's show. I have to give it to Petka because he gave me the idea. Next week's show is going to be with Jerry Hubble. We're going to talk about drift alignment. Whether you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, we're going to go over the basics for beginners on how to do it, because some people can't see the NCP or the southern object that they need to see. What is it, octans? Is that what they use? Yeah. So we're going to go over how to do a drift alignment, and I think that will be very beneficial. And I haven't seen it done yet on Focus on Astrophotography since I've taken over. So we're going to get in on that next week. But again, Mike, I appreciate you stopping in, showing us your great smartphone capabilities. I can't wait for you to actually get into a dedicated astronomy camera to see what you can do. I'm waiting.
Mike, do you ever use your smartphone for making regular phone calls or anything like that, or is it just all
occasionally?
How about daytime pictures?
Well, actually, yeah. Because when I walk out to the observatory, sometimes I will see a bobcat or
that's true. That's true.
Yes,
wildlife photography. That's right. Very cool.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Well, Mike, I am very, very anxiously anticipating the second Arizona Dark Sky Star Party. Oracle State Park looks like it's the perfect place to be for us. And so if you guys haven't already been thinking about it, go ahead and mark down the dates. It's going to be September 22nd through the 25th, Oracle State Park, which is right next to Oracle, Arizona. And it's very near Biosphere 2, I think, right? So, if you guys want to volunteer to be enclosed for what was it, 2 years or something, in there.
They don't do
They
that.
almost starved to death. But anyways, very interesting experiment, and certainly something we should probably check out. The other thing I'm thinking about is the mirror making lab in University of Arizona. I think it's U of A that manages both facilities. And then the following weekend, we are scheduling to lock in the 100-inch telescope at Mount Wilson. Okay, so this is the telescope that actually was able to prove that there were galaxies outside of the Milky Way. Back in 1923, I think is when it was, with Edwin Hubble and Humason, capturing a Cepheid variable in what was then known as the Andromeda Nebula instead of the Andromeda Galaxy. Beautiful facility, very well maintained, steeped in history, and you go there and you can feel the history that's there. Some people say that these facilities are even somewhat haunted. So if you're into that, I have heard weird noises at night. I spent many a night at Mount Wilson. I used to have keys to the facility and maintain one of the little observatories. So there's strange things that go on there at night. Nothing deadly, just kind of strange. You hear things like footsteps in the middle of the night, when you're like one of only two people there and the other guy's like right next to you. So anyhow, but it is the cradle of the field of astrophysics. It's where it all started. But I do also give the nod to Yerkes Observatory, which George Ellery Hale also established. So, but it really takes off at Mount Wilson, and so that's part of that. We're also looking at a tour of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So that would happen the following weekend. So, so watch for these special events, and I think that Mr. Weasner is all in for participating in both, and it's going to be fun. I want to try to get amateur astronomers that love experiences like that, and get you involved and get you behind the scenes as much as possible. So. And that's all I got right now. Don't forget, we had Terry Mann on talking about Astronomical League Live 13, which comes on in about 1 hour. So you guys have anything more that you'd like to say to wrap up on this fantastic Friday?
I just want to, again, appreciate Mike, you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It's always great to see familiar faces on, and I know what you do with the IDA. It's with the astrophotography community. So please keep up the great work.
Yeah.
If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out and ask, because I'm sure Scott will pay for whatever you need.
That's right. Hey, Scott. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I now have 2 products from Explore Scientific that as soon as your accounting system can handle the order that Kent put in for me this morning, they're going to ship next week. So thank you.
Good. Very good.
Perfect.
Excellent. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thanks, guys, and have a great weekend, everybody. And don't forget, 1 hour from now, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, Astronomical League Live will be on. And we'll, until that time, keep looking up. If I can find the end of our program here, wherever it is.
Where's that
Here we go.
button?
Here we go. All right, here we go.